I spent the last year designing and building my dream workshop, and let's just say things did not go as planned. It took way longer than I expected and cost me $120,000 more than I budgeted. But after all the long days, mistakes, and course corrections, I've learned some game-changing lessons that you need to know before you try to build your own. So if you've ever wondered what it really takes to go from a rough blueprint sketch to a fully built dream workshop, you're in the right place. This video is sponsored by Shopify. The game plan. Here's what I'm thinking for my shop. 30 by 30. Except everyone who has a 30 by 30 that I've talked to says they wish they went 30 by 40. So 30 by 40. Except everyone who has a 30 by 40 that I talk to says they wish they went 40 by 50, which is 2,000 square feet. That seems a bit big, so I'm going to go 35 by 57, 1,995 square feet. Just right. I know, I have issues. For a roll-up door, instead of an 8 by 8 or a 10 by 10, we're going 12 by 12 to help with resale value if someone has an RV. If you want to know a free way to make your building look more expensive, here's a little tip I learned from all my architect friends. If you pay attention to scale, massing, and rhythm in your design, your building will look more pleasing to the eye and seem more expensive than it actually is. So using the roll-up door as a starting off point, we're going to center our windows here and make the headers sit at 8 feet tall. That'll look good if we use an 8-foot door instead of a standard 6'8" door on the side of the building. Instead of just putting 1 or 2 random windows next to the door, we're going to put a nice rhythm of windows along this side of the shop for natural light. And the cool thing about this is that each opening, whether a window or a door, is exactly 3 feet with an 8-foot header. It looks better than something like this. We're going to steal the back 12 feet of the shop and make an office. Now we'll need a door to get in, so here's another tip. We're going to let this window determine where our door is going to be. And while we're at it, let's place this window in line so that if you were looking through the front window, you could see all the way through the back of the building. Intentionality, my friends, it's a thing. One last thing, I want a porch. So while we're pouring concrete and welding up a structure, we're going to make a lean-to porch on this side of the shop, which will provide some shade in the summer and a dry way to get in the shop if it's raining. Now, in case all these sketches weren't enough, I made a scale model of my shop using my laser cutter and 3D printer. My wife calls it my Maker Barbie house, but really this was a great way for me to figure out exactly what I wanted to build, where I should put my tools, and it served as a communication device with my contractor so he could see the vision that was inside of my head. I'd say it's time to pour concrete, but there's one major problem that we need to address, and it's an expensive curveball I didn't see coming. Alright, whoever came up with the phrase cheaper than dirt is a cotton-headed ninny-muggins. It's not true. I had to buy dirt for days and it wasn't cheap. Here's what happened. Now what you see here is us receiving about $8,000 worth of clean, filled dirt for free. It's actually pretty easy to get $8,000 worth of free dirt if you ever need some. All you do is convince your neighbor to put in a pool. And when they realize that they have nowhere to put all the dirt they're excavating, you swoop in and offer to save the day by taking it off their hands for free. They don't have to pay to haul away the dirt, and you don't have to pay to bring in the dirt. It's a win-win. At this point in the project, I thought we hit the jackpot and dodged a huge site prep bill, but as you'll see in a moment, I'm delusional. I've been around construction projects since I was a teenager, and one of the very first lessons I learned early on, besides the illusion of budgets and deadlines, is that the site elevation and dirt you start with matters way more than you'd like them to. Now here's a tip to help you save some money, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, but just go with me. If you're doing a big project like this, don't do it yourself. Get a quality and experienced contractor who's trustworthy and get them involved as soon as you can. And I know this is YouTube and that just sounded like blasphemy. There are times when the cheapest and fastest thing to do is just to hire a professional. If you hire the right person, it actually might take less time and cost less than if you did it yourself. Of course, there's exceptions and the real work is finding the right person you can trust, but I think generally that advice is true. Now, if you do go that route, here's the real tip if you're gonna do something custom. Have the contractor review the potential site you're gonna build on before you make any decisions or get emotionally attached. It could save you from starting an expensive project on a bad canvas. Now, good contractors will catch the things the rest of us wouldn't even think to look for. For example, slight changes in elevation might mean the difference between a normal concrete pour or a huge, expensive foundation with retention that compensates for a drastic slope. Now, if you're looking at multiple places to build, this alone could help you save money. I know this from experience. Now, when we bought our home a few years ago, building a shop wasn't top of mind. We were moving 4 hours away and needed to close on a house before school started. Like many people who bought homes immediately following that little pandemic, we were just grateful to land something that met our needs without getting into a bidding war with someone fleeing California with Scrooge McDuck money. Since I was a little boy, I've always wanted a big piece of land with a river and a forest. And at 41 years of age, this little boy scored a house with a river and forest on the back acre of our property. Since the river creates what FEMA loves to call a floodplain, our builders elevated the home site a little higher than normal, something that I appreciate after dealing with water damage in the past. Now, while the little boy inside of me is happy, the 41-year-old with the wallet isn't. That's because no one told the builder that the future buyer of the home would be a C-tier YouTuber who would outgrow the garage in a year and would need to build a ridiculous video studio for all the fake woodworking they do on YouTube. So, because of that oversight, said C-tier YouTuber is forced to spend a small fortune to build up the slight hill to make a level pad for the shop. What looked like a slight hill in our backyard to me turned out to be an 8-foot drop from the front of the shop to the back once we put a laser level on it. My wallet still hurts. At our first meeting, our contractor Dan took one look and he warned me that we would need significant amount of fill dirt to level the pad. Now, like you, I wanted to know how much it would cost. You know it's bad when they won't even guess the cost. Now, the free pull dirt was nice, but unfortunately, it barely made a dent. It eventually took us 5 full days of constant trucks coming in to drop dirt. The bad news is we ended up buying 1,110 yards of dirt. The good news is that my youngest son developed a healthy love and obsession with bobcats and took on the role of supervisor. So maybe seeing him fall in love with bobcats was worth the price. To be honest, and I know this is YouTube and generally not the place when people are honest, but we could have made the pad smaller and saved some money, but that would have given us a very steep and unsafe incline all around the shop. My 2 older boys have stolen my riding lawnmower from me, so mowing the property is rightly their responsibility now. The thought of them having an accident mowing a steep hill next to my shop is not something that I was willing to risk, so we made the executive decision to buy a certified butt ton of dirt so we could sculpt a generous apron around the building, creating as safe of a slope as possible. Now, did I want to spend extra money on that? No. But in the event of something happening to my kids or anyone else for that matter, in that moment, I certainly would do anything and pay anything to have an undo button. I've debated about telling you how much we spent on dirt here because I frankly forgot about it and I really don't want to look at the numbers again, but also it's kind of embarrassing and it still hurts. So I'll tell you what, I'll put a number on the screen and you tell me in the comments whether you're taking the over or the under. And at the end of the video, I'll tell you down to the final dollar how much we spent on stupid dirt. If I were you, I'd take the over. If you ever have a concrete foundation poured, make sure you pay close attention to how the forms are set up. I've heard more than one horror story of a concrete foundation not being poured square, level, or even centered on a driveway leading up to it. Now, you would hope that the crew building the forms would take positioning into account, but the reality is they often just hit the ground running and they're thinking about other things like swinging a sledgehammer. I made sure that I over-communicated with Dan, the contractor, where I wanted the building to sit in relation to our house. And I even went so far as to put temporary stakes where I thought it would land. In case that was enough, I flew a drone in the air, sorry, New Jersey, and took some pictures and drew out where I wanted the building to square up. Now from this shot, you can get a great view of just how much dirt we had to bring in to level the shop with our home. And to backtrack just a bit, before we gave the green light on the foundation, we waited until a nice heavy rain came as an extra precaution to make sure that our site was compacted well. And when I was a kid, I thought foundations were solid concrete, meaning the thickness you saw at the perimeter was how thick it was all the way through. But that's not how foundations are made, at least not here in the country of Texas. Here, you can see the supervisor keeping a close eye on the crew as they use an excavator to dig trenches all around the perimeter and in the middle. Now, these beams or footers, whatever you want to call them, are deeper and thicker than the main parts in the middle, and they'll give the foundation most of its strength. Then they found the world's largest trash bags to wrap the dirt. And at first glance, you might think they're just doing this to make the concrete sit better and not mix with the dirt. But the real purpose is that it forms a moisture barrier, which is actually really important, especially if you plan on putting an epoxy floor coating on the finished surface like I am, which we'll cover in the next episode. Now, since we live in the country, we're on our own private water well and septic system. Now, I knew we could get water to the shop pretty easy, but I wasn't sure about how to deal with waste. And it turns out it's actually not that hard. This is called a grinder pump. Basically, you plumb everything down to it, and when it receives, you know what, it grinds it up and then pumps it out. And at first, we thought we'd have to trench all the way to the other side of our house where our septic system is, but our illustrious plumber noticed that we had a clean out near a bathroom on the side of our house close to the shop. Now, you know how when something is better, it's usually more expensive, or when something is easier, it's usually not as good? Well, in this case, we broke all those rules because it was actually cheaper, easier, and better to tie into the clean out instead of trenching a couple of 100 feet to our septic tank, probably hitting AT&T's fiber line in the process. Now, I don't know if this is standard practice, but since rain was coming, the crew dug 2 trenches on the back of the footings to drain water in case the forms filled up. Also, giant red ants in the country are no joke. One of the cool things about this entire project was getting to watch the pros do their thing. From how the pros carry and drop rebar, no need for this dude to go to CrossFit, to seeing this dude lay out the rebar quickly and effectively in a matter of a few minutes. I'm always amazed at how quickly some of these guys get the job done when they've done it for a long period of time. One way we saved a little bit of money was doing all of our concrete in one pour instead of separating the foundation from the flat work. So before we poured the foundation, we took care of all the extra flat work we need to do for the job. Did you ever read the book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? It's a hilarious story of how every time you do something for the mouse, he's going to ask for something else. And it's kind of a story about how things can get out of hand. Basically, if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to ask you for a glass of milk. If you give him a glass of milk, he's going to ask you for a straw, so on and so forth. Well, we basically played that game with concrete. If you're going to build a shop, we're going to need to extend the driveway up to the shop. And if we extend the driveway, we probably want to widen it to match the width of the shop. And if we widen it, we probably should put in a basketball goal for the kids. And if we put in a basketball goal, we probably should expand the driveway a little to match. And if we expand the driveway a little, we might as well extend the other side so it matches even more. It's a long way of saying that if you give this mouse a cookie, it's going to cost you an extra $12,000 in flat work upgrades. Contractor Dan calls this gutting the concrete. For things like garage doors or porches that drop down, you can lay 2x4s down to create the void that you'll need when you pour the concrete. I've seen the result of this my entire life, but this is the first time that I was actually on site when I saw someone form this void up. So if you have a garage or a porch or something like that in your house, take a look and notice how the concrete drops down and is formed. This is how they did it. It took me a while to give the green light to start this project. Even though I had outgrown my garage, I was fine waiting a few more years to build my shop. But then I learned about the concrete mafia. It seems like each month, all the concrete companies get together and collectively raise their prices at the same time. And if you look at the trends of concrete prices going back 4 years, one thing is certain: the longer you wait, the more you'll pay. For example, in our area, if you were pouring a slab in 2019, it would cost you about $8.50 a square foot. A year ago, it would have cost you $9.75 a square foot. When we poured our slab in September of 2024, it cost us $10 a square foot. I'm recording this in January of 2025, and it's already increased again to $10.50 a square foot. It turns out there's 3 things guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and the inflation of concrete. And everything else. Why are eggs so expensive? And in case you're wondering how much one of those super cool concrete pump cranes cost, $500,000 for this one right here. Crazy, right? Now you'll get a kick out of this. I'm not a short form vertical content creator. I mean, I dabble a little bit, but my main focus is long form YouTube videos like you're watching right now. When we were pouring the slab, I found it so interesting that my metal building guy showed up at 5 a.m. I thought he just wanted to watch the pour, but he was there to work. He went to work carefully setting the steel plates in the foundation where he'd eventually secure the metal building to. I thought it was so awesome that I pulled out my phone, hit record, got this video, and then I uploaded it to Snapface. I put my phone away, and a day later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 1.4 million views later, it appears that we struck a nerve with every concrete and metal building engineer online with an opinion. I heard everything from, your concrete is going to crack the moment you put a building on there, to those aren't big enough, you're an idiot, to that's not how the pros do it, if a windstorm comes, the building's not going to hold. It was quite comical. And when I showed all the comments to the guys who've been building metal buildings this way for 20 years, they got a nice laugh and had a few choice words for you, Stan in Iowa. And for the record, these are called Nelson embeds. I saw how hard this crew was working, and I cannot say enough good things about them. And here's another pro tip for you. If you want to make sure your contractors do a great job and don't do anything to screw you over in the process, promise them their favorite cerveza at the end of the job. And boy, were they happy, especially on a hot Texas September afternoon. Just make sure they don't crack the Modelo during the job. It's always amazing to me how quickly concrete hardens. I mean, within hours, they were walking on it, and by the afternoon, it sounded like a rock. I mean, it's obviously still curing for a few weeks, and you wouldn't want to drive on it for at least 72 hours, but it's really cool how fast this stuff dries. The first thing I got to do in this entire project was kind of strange. They tasked me with watering the concrete as if it were grass for 3 days. Now, apparently, if you keep moisture on top of it, it will help slow down the evaporation and the curing, and it'll make the concrete stronger and less prone to cracking. I thought they were joking with me at first, but when I posted stories about this on Instagram when I was doing it, several concrete pros messaged me and told me that I was doing the best thing and that they were impressed that I knew to do it. So, at least there's a few professionals on the internet who approve what we're doing with the concrete. You're probably wondering why I'm building such a big shop and how I can afford to do so. And the honest answer is the sponsor of today's video, Shopify. I've been using Shopify to run my woodworking business for 2.5 years now, and it's the main driver behind our business growth and the need for this bigger workspace. Now, there were some things about track saws that bothered me, like this hole in the side or the sharp ends of a track. So I came up with some solutions for those problems, and then I started offering them to the world using Shopify. I did the same with trim routers. We make this oversized base and custom designed dust chute to collect most of the sawdust when routing on an edge. We just released these and have already shipped over 1,000 of them around the world. Now, I didn't go to business school and I don't know how to code. It still blows my mind that someone like me can run a business that ships around the world using my smartphone. They've really figured out how to take all the complexity out of running an online business. There's no need to code. They have a simple drag and drop store editor, which helps me easily make changes to my storefront anytime I want. They have this live view tool that is awesome. It shows you in real time where people are viewing your store. The marketing tools are easy to use, and the back office dashboards and analytics help me oversee all of my operations. It's easy to track my orders, manage inventory, issue discounts, and create new product listings. Now, if you have a business idea or you already own a business, go to shopify.com/whitworks to get started so you can build the life you want. This is Big Jose, and this is Little Jose, Big Jose's helper. I've spent the past few months seeing them every day, and I'm not positive, but I think technically Little Jose is bigger than Big Jose. But since Big Jose is the boss and doing most of the welding on my building, I'm not gonna say anything. Now, first, I was going to go with a bolt-together metal building kit, mostly because that's what I've seen a lot of other people do. It's fast, and it's actually pretty cheap. You can usually get one of these built in 2 to 3 days. After drawing out the design I wanted, one of my neighbors started building essentially the same type of building that I had dreamed up. It was really helpful because there was a real-world example down the street of what I had in my head for a few years. After awkwardly introducing myself to the owner, I was really impressed with the quality of the work that I was seeing, and as I learned, his building wasn't from a bolt-up kit. It was custom cut and welded on site. Now, it's a little more expensive and takes way longer, but at the end of the day, you have a significantly stronger building, and that's what I was interested in. Since I'm going to spend a significant amount of my waking hours in this building for work, I decided that I wanted to build the shop strong from the start. That way, I wouldn't be limited with mounting anything anywhere. And also, if there was a big windstorm or something similar, I wouldn't have any concern about the building falling. Now, honestly, if I were building this as a pure hobby shop or a place to store a tractor or a boat, I would have just gone with a cheap bolt-up building kit. But since this is going to be my wood shop, YouTube studio, 3D print farm, and office, I wanted to build the best building I could. After a few months, I ended up interviewing the company that did my neighbor's building and checked out other shops they had built in the area. And when they weren't looking, I asked the homeowners what they really thought. Everyone was more than happy with the quality of the work and the attention to the details. And that was good enough for me, especially since I'm a details kind of guy. The only knock that they had was that these buildings take a long time to build, generally 2 to 3 months, but I was okay with that because I wanted to film a lot of the process, and if they worked too fast, it was going to be more work and more stress on me. So the fact that they work a little slower than other people was actually in my favor. I think Big Jose is scared of you staying in Iowa because he repeatedly asked me to point out that he's only doing tack welds to get the building upright. This allows him to make fine-tune adjustments and square the building later. Once he's satisfied with how the building is sitting, he'll go around and do a final weld on everything. One surprising thing I didn't know about was how they use these big straps to pull and adjust everything. Now, I just assumed they'd put a 20-foot beam in the air, put a level on it, and then weld away. But it was cool to see them tack the columns up and then obsess with tape measures and push and pull until they got the building perfectly plumb, level, and square. I wondered how they'd get the massive I-beams in the air, and it turns out that a bobcat is the answer to everything, which made the supervisor really happy. And since the supervisor was obsessed with bobcats, we had to buy him one for his birthday. Now, the real bobcat had this hydraulic special attachment that seemed to make everything really easy. And on a side note, there were probably around 8 to 9 different skid steers or excavators that showed up on this job site, and every single operator was so kind and gracious to let the supervisor get close and sometimes even sit in one. Every time they'd find out there was a little kid close by who was interested in the vehicle, it seemed that the worker got more joy out of showing it off to the little kid than the kid seeing the real piece of machinery. So, an honest question for you: what is it about construction vehicles and little boys, and 40-year-old men for that matter? Is it the power, the novelty, or the possibility of what you can do with it? It's really interesting. Sadly, the bobcat only stayed on site for about 2 hours and then left, which made the supervisor very, very, very unhappy. The wall plate here is 14 feet high, which is kind of scary working that high up in a scissor lift that sways in the nice Texas afternoon wind. Jose, can I go up with you? Jose wanted me to let all the commenters know that he isn't a welder, so don't judge him by his welds, which totally gave me a ton of confidence because I hired him for his welding. I'm still trying to figure out if he's trying to protect himself from internet trolls or if he's just pretending to be a welder to me, at which I'm wondering why I'm paying him. From this angle, you can once again see how much fill dirt we had to bring in to build the site pad up. My heart, wallet, still hurts from that. I love construction because you can see the physical transformation occur in front of your eyes. Seeing the shell up like this was so satisfying. And to see something that I sketched out on a piece of paper come to life in red iron was amazing. I don't know how many hours I've stood out on the dirt pad and stared up at the sky, trying to visualize where the building would sit and how high the roof would be. This was a great day. As mentioned before, I love seeing the brilliant tips and tricks that these pros use who do this stuff every day. Instead of buying or making window shims to position the windows on the same plane, they just use something they had. A carpenter's pencil, and I'm pretty sure they thought I was crazy for taking a video of it. Now, I'm not a home builder, but I think when you build a home with timber construction, you put your siding material up, do all your waterproofing, then you put your windows in. But for metal buildings, it's done in reverse. Don't ask me why. I don't know. This is just something Big Jose told me. I was really particular with what I wanted my window spacing to be, and Jose let me come beside him for a few hours on window day to work out the math so every distance between the windows and doors would be consistent. Now, at one point, my wife came out to apologize for me being a highly specific perfectionist, and Big Jose told her what I already knew, that he was an even bigger perfectionist and it didn't bother him. And it's actually one of the reasons why I hired Jose over all the other people. Dude, get to work.
I'm about to leave.
If he put something up and he didn't like it, he would rip it down and start all over. I have pretty high standards, and Jose's standards were even higher than mine.
Try them.
What are they called?
Rancheritos. Let's just chips with
Like Doritos?
just in case.
It's a Dorito.
Those are good.
You're gonna make my clothes dirty, man. I like to be clean.
Now this blew me away. All of the skin panels, including the roof, fit on this trailer. And it makes sense once you see the profiles and how they just stack, but still, I got a kick out of it and couldn't believe that all of the material that we needed was on this trailer. The best part about this is that the skin and the roof went on super fast in just a matter of a few days. It took about a month for Jose to get just the structure up. Part of that is because he doesn't have a big crew, because he wants to maintain quality, and he has to drive about an hour each way to even come to the site, so he doesn't have a long working day. But still, once the skin went up, it went up fast. However, trimming around the windows took forever because Big Jose is a perfectionist. I'm not complaining. I appreciate it. If you're pixel peeping and have a close eye, you've probably noticed that the porch structure is now painted black. Before we put any of the panels up, we had the porch painted so that we didn't get any paint on the underside of the porch roof. A little bit of forethought there. I'm only showing you this because the painter saw me videoing him and he asked if I was shooting a TikTok, which I found funny.
I don't use TikTok.
Because no, I would never be on TikTok. You may be wondering why one of the helpers is putting a 3-foot piece of white panel just on the front. Well, that's Karen's fault. What do you call a group of Karens? An HOA. Now our HOA isn't bad. They're pretty hands-off and have some pretty common sense rules, but there's one rule that isn't common sense, and that's if you build a shop, it has to have a minimum of 3 feet of stone or brick wainscoting on the front for decorative reasons. Now someone probably named Karen thinks that's good, and I just disagree. This building would look way better if the metal siding went all the way down, but no, I can't do that. I tried to fight it. I didn't win. So what Karen doesn't know is that I'm gonna put some free paint grade brick on the front, and I'm gonna paint it to match the metal siding so it won't stick out. And just as a backup, I've got a plan to make some giant concrete planter boxes to sit in front and hide the brick. Nothing in the HOA covenant that prohibits that. The back 12 feet of the shop will be partitioned off to give me a clean sawdust-free space for an office, and I thought about making the wall myself out of 2x4s, but I ended up paying Jose a little extra just to build the partition himself, which he did in about a day and a half, and I didn't have to get up on the ladder, and it made the building much stronger. What Jose is doing right now is building a custom bracket for one of my new favorite tools that I'll reveal in the next video. He's going the extra mile here in welding the strongest bracket so we can secure my new tool 20 feet in the air. All I'll say is it's a dream come true and easily one of the most impressive and jaw-dropping things that we're installing in this shop. Okay, I can't keep it a secret. It's a 16-foot big ass fan, which is appropriately named. We're in Texas and we're gonna need all the help we can get to stay cool here about 9 months out of the year when it's crazy hot. Now, I'm really excited to have this fan and also to show you a bunch of stuff that I learned by getting it. And no, I'm not worried about sawdust flying everywhere because I have a 5 horsepower Dust Gorilla Pro by Oneida that will be secured right here on these special metal studs that your boy, Big Jose, welded up for me, and I don't think he charged me for it. At this point, we're in a mad dash to finish the metal building because the electricians have already showed up and started working before the building was even complete. We still need to install the 8-foot man doors. We have a 12-foot roll-up garage door that needs to go in, and it will make you pucker when you see how they installed it. We have to bring electrical service to the shop, and that's not going to be cheap. And I still need to figure out where to install all the plugs for my tools. To combat the hot Texas sun, we're gonna make this place an igloo cooler by spraying foam insulation on the shell instead of fiberglass. We have lights to install, a bathroom to build, pets' heads are falling off, the walls need to be lined with 3/4 inch plywood. We need to build an office ceiling 12 feet in the air because I'm an animal. We've got an epoxy floor to lay down, mini splits to install. There's so much more work to do. I'll cover all of those things in the next episode, so if you made it this far and you have specific questions you want me to answer about any of those projects that I just previewed, let me know in the comments and I'll try my best to work that info in to part 2 of this series so you can learn as much as possible. So for all those who took the over or under on the dirt cost, the bill came in at $24,000. Yeah, I know, dumb. And in case you haven't fallen in love with Big Jose yet, here is undeniable proof that he is the best contractor I could have hired to build this building. This is my builder, Jose, and he's got such a great attention to detail. He just pointed out to me, I just noticed that the roof right there, the lines of the panels are in line with the sides of the roof, of the side panels, which is a crazy little detail that I didn't pay attention to, that he has thought through things that amount. Which would be kind of crazy because it's going to get spray foamed and you won't ever see that. But it's nice to know that Jose is a craftsman that does that type of work.
Jason didn't think about that.
No, he didn't.